I'd like to call the Stockbridge Board of Selectmen meeting for March 10th, 2022 to order. Our first order of business tonight is to take action on meeting minutes for February 10th, February 17th, and February 24th.
I'll make a motion. We accept the meetings for those dates.
Okay. On the 24th, I have two letters that need to be removed from one word. Is this a typo? Are you guys okay with that?
That's fine.
With correction of the typo, yes.
With a correction of the typo. All right, I second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And next up, Police Department, where's Daryl?
Hi, Daryl.
There he is.
Chief.
He's not in the room. So, Police Department, conditional offer of employment for R. Messina. So, Daryl, it's all yours.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. Yeah, I'm here tonight to request your approval for an appointment to be able to offer a conditional offer of employment to fill one open full-time position within the department. That candidate is it's more or less a promotion, really, as Officer Messina works as a reserve for us now. He's currently full-time trained. He works in the town of West Stockbridge, and he works as a reserve for us. So we'd like to fill our full-time position and move him up into that spot with your approval, of course.
Any questions from either of you?
Trust your judgment, I mean, you know.
Yeah, we tend to trust your judgment, Chief. So I make a motion that we approve the offer of employment to R. Messina.
I know him very well. It'll be a great fit.
If I might add, Rosario is his first name, and I think a lot of the people know him. He's worked full-time for us in the past. He left back in 18 to accept
1800.
We're glad to have him back. He's very well liked around the town. He's very well known around the town. He's always been a great fit for Stockbridge. Very community-oriented police officer, and thank you so much for the approval.
And I talked to him quite a bit when he's on the road details and stuff, and yeah, it would be a great fit. No issues whatsoever. Welcome.
Hi, Rosario. I didn't see that you were here. So we have a motion.
Okay. Thank you.
We have to vote, yes, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Good luck. See you out there.
Rosario's first day will be the 24th.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
Oh, that's great. He's a great guy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda,
Good night.
review, discuss, and appoint a highway foreman. And Hugh, would you like to come up and make your recommendation?
Well, let me first say that it's definitely a different environment nationally, globally, the last couple of years. We find ourselves hard place to fill work openings. However, that being said, Stockbridge has been blessed with having a few good candidates to pick from. And it's a very hard decision. When you're faced with that decision, it changes not only the situation this employee we put in, but what we're put in. On paper, this guy has a lot of good things to bring to us. Ethically, I think he's got a lot of good things. I think Stockbridge could maybe take advantage of his knowledge and help work together and fill this position successfully.
Who is this person?
We got,
Oh,
You haven't had a look at it yet.
Yeah, no, okay.
Yeah, it's Carmelo Garda.
Garda.
If I understand it, we have somebody that we're hiring either to be a lieutenant or over our current foreman of
No.
a small department. Why do we need two foremen over a small department?
Hugh is our highway superintendent. This is a position under Hugh. This would be the
Oh, one at a
second
time.
in, yes,
So then,
second in command.
Why do we need two people?
It's a working person to manage a crew. So you have a crew that goes out and you have someone has to be in charge of the people. We got a lot of hourly workers or temporary summer workers.
Why do we need the other guy?
What's that?
We have a small department. Why do we need
Well,
basically one-on-one managing a small department? I do not understand that.
because I think that if you have, folks who are going out to work on a job or 3 or 4 people going to mow lawns and they're not full-time employees, but you want to have somebody who is the foreman for those employees, it's a union situation. So if you're managing people, we got to call them a foreman, I feel like also that there's an absolutely appropriate time to debate all of the ways that we staff the town in the budget meetings that lead up to town meeting. But this is a position that the voters approved last year with approving the budget. And so the time to like kind of challenge it, I think, we're not creating this position. This position has been there for years.
What you need to understand is that Hugh is,
This last time, I'm on the finance committee. I don't ever remember that being a part of it.
what I would like you to understand is that Hugh is the highway superintendent. So he is a working superintendent. Obviously, he's out there working hard a great deal of the time. He also has administrative duties. Having the secondary foreman to also be able to go out with a crew and supervise that crew. We could then go out with separate 2 crews and be working on different projects at the same time. So, at any rate, would you like to continue?
No, I mean, that pretty much sums it up. I mean, this will help set structure and, it's just another tool, like Roxanne said, that with things coming down, the state mandates, you're quite busy with things coming down. I mean, we got a lot of things coming down, snow and ice to take care of during the summer. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes. I love going out and working with the guys. I absolutely do. But you need somebody there when I'm not there to take point. I can't go to the crew and bring everybody in. It's not very efficient. It's not good time management to interrupt the whole work day with bringing everybody in. You need a go-to guy, no matter what the situation is. So that's kind of what this position, I think, is a go-to guy, to help out in the field.
So, that's your recommendation to us?
I think so, yes.
It was interviewed with Mike and did the interviews and all that, and that's what's the
Comes
recommendation.
with a ton of experience.
So I'll make a motion that we,
I mean, look, I fully support it and I'm absolutely going to vote for it. I trust your judgment. I wonder if when we're hiring managers for the town, that folks should come in, even if it's perfunctory, and come before the board so that the public can meet them. I'm not saying we have to do it this time. I just think,
You, Mike, and Tony's positions absolutely would do that. But this is a working foreman's position within the department.
It's the working foreman's
So if you
position,
want
and
to do it that way,
typically,
it's up to you guys.
yeah. In the past,
have you met the John?
no, I have not. Typically, the way it has worked with highway, with this level of position, is the superintendent interviews, the town administrator interviews. They typically, and in the past, this has been the case with all these positions, they make their recommendations.
I know,
If you have any
I
doubts.
know the family and
And
stuff.
obviously,
Okay. As long
yeah,
as-
Same as the police department just did.
But I knew Rosario. I mean, I've known him for years.
right.
But the other-
But if you didn't-
You don't always know everyone,
Right.
so.
I know, but I just feel like the board has a responsibility. We are the executive that hires folks, and it'd be nice, I mean, I'm happy to take your advice, Michael, but,
We can have them come in on a
yeah,
Thursday morning meeting
okay.
And meet them, yeah.
and meet them
Yeah,
and
we'll meet him.
All right, so motion to hire this gentleman, what's his name? We want to keep going.
Carmelo Garda.
Okay, Carmelo Garda, yes.
Will you make the motion?
Yeah, I'm making the motion.
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
okay.
In closing, I do appreciate the comments, and the concerns and the input, I mean, I'd rather have that head on, so I do appreciate it. And I'm always available for any questions or concerns, so thank you very much.
We do want Hugh to be able to go on vacation now and then, so.
What's that?
Next up, we have a reappointment to the Great Barrington Public Transportation Advisory Committee. It's currently filled by Jamie Minacci. I move that we reappoint Jamie Minacci to the Great Barrington Public Transportation Advisory Committee.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, next up, we're going to have a presentation by Patrick Sheehan.
I have a
And-
point of information.
We hear the introduction.
I haven't even made the
I have
introduction
a
yet.
point of
Danny.
information.
Okay,
It's all up to you to choose.
This is addressed to the chair. When you were running for select board, you'll recall that you came to my home and talked to me in my kitchen. And we discussed the cottage era estate bylaw and the Aristavi and Italianate mansion for sale on Ice Glen Road.
Denny,
You told me
I'm gonna stop
that your
here.
daughter and a significant other had looked at the property with a realtor with an eye to develop it or another property in Stockbridge as a cottage era estate with resort or dining potential. If
Denny,
that is still a possibility now or in the
do you have a police
future,
officer in the building?
I wonder if the people of the town of Stockbridge feel as I would that you should publicly declare that potential conflict of interest regarding your family interests before you invited a developer in to speak before this board.
Denny,
And
I'm
you
stopping you
yourself
here.
Decisions and deliberations about the cottage era estate in the future. Roxanne, I'm addressing this comment to you.
Are you done?
I am done.
Anytime you want.
Number one, it's an inaccurate
Hey,
account. My
guys,
daughter
come
looked
on.
at a property on Ice Glen
I'm
Road.
sorry.
My daughter looked at a property on Ice Glen Road. This was 3 years ago.
Jim, don't take the bait. Come on.
Jim,
Do me a
But
favor.
this is irrelevant to this evening. It is not on the agenda. And you can believe what you want, but obviously my daughter does not own a property in Stockbridge. She's not developing a property in Stockbridge.
And if anybody who wanted to buy a property potentially in the whole town had a conflict with another person who owns a property in the town, Denny, I am sensitive to what your issues are here, but this isn't really helping your case. You know, I
It's
would.
not about a case. It's, I'm
I'm just
presenting
saying,
a
she's not
point of
related to
information,
Mr. Sheehan.
which, you know, we had an email exchange about this. This is something that, you
No,
know.
we had an email exchange about
happened.
some of your concerns. It had nothing to do with my daughter.
And you bring in family.
Okay. Well, thank you for hearing my point of information.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. So I have invited Patrick Sheehan to present to the board and the public his vision and options for future use and development of 37 Interlaken Road. We will not discuss any particular plan, nor is there any application pending before any town board. This is a general information meeting aimed at hearing Mr. Sheehan's ideas and your questions regarding the same for clarification. I do not expect the board members to ask much, if anything. Rather, we're here to listen to Mr. Sheehan and the public. The public will be invited to ask questions after Mr. Sheehan has spoken, but you must raise your hand, be recognized by the chair, and identify yourself. If you're attending in person, please come to the podium to speak. Chat on Zoom is disabled, and that's basically as recommended by the Massachusetts Selectmen's Association. General comments and speculation will not be allowed. Mr. Sheehan will not be expected to respond to any questions regarding past requests or past uses of the property, nor will he be expected to answer any questions that seek his reaction to a hypothetical use or development. In the interest of time, please keep your questions brief and to the point. In the event that we cannot get to all of you tonight, and it looks like we have quite a few people on Zoom, please submit your questions to selectmen@townofstockbridge-mass.gov. Please specify 37 Interlaken in the subject line. A meeting packet has been posted on the town website with information that may be included in Mr. Sheehan's discussion. I want to ensure that a mutually respectful atmosphere is maintained as an indication of our commitment as a community to democratic process. I look forward to a productive session. And that being said, Mr. Sheehan, would you like to come to the podium?
The microphone is working.
that's for the TV. That's not for you.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll put this on. Sure. Does that reach? I mean, I think it'll pick you up, but.
Patrick, so, just put it on the
All right, Mr. Sheehan, you may proceed.
You're on.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here tonight. Just want to provide a little bit of information on the property and on our kind of vision. If we're able to move forward with anything on the property.
Can you speak a little louder?
Sure. 37 Interlaken is a 320 acre property. I purchased the property in 2009. Just want to recognize Sean Ferry in the crowd. He's been with me since what, 2003? And he started when he was 5 years old. He's the property manager, takes good care of the property, good care of the buildings. And he's got a bunch of blown up boards that kind of correspond with the small handout that I'm looking at, that the folks on Zoom can see if anybody wants to refer to any of those boards. The property does have an interesting history. It was the original home to Tanglewood. It was later the Stockbridge School. Then it became the DeSisto School. And again, I purchased it in 2009. It's 320 acres. I think the front part of the property is in an R2, the rear is in an R4. Just as you're going through the slides, an overview of the property is in slide one.
That one. Yep.
And it shows the magnitude of this property and kind of how we would like to develop it. So in the front, we were trying to restore the historic mansion and build a hotel, roughly 40 units. We've preserved the kind of the great front lawn, so that's undisturbed. You know, all the land between the street and the main mansion. Kind of secondary to the main mansion, we put in a series of buildings that would house condotels that would be built in phases. So the units could be purchased and lived in. They could also be, rented to folks, and a little bit of flexibility there. And then they could also kind of be managed by the hotel and work with the hotel. I've always managed all my own businesses. I've had the property since 2009. I live there occasionally now, and I'd be on the property running it and and living there. So to the extent there was any noise or problems or anything that people were worried about, the people that would bear the brunt of it would be me and the other residents on the property. There's some wetlands between the front part of the property and the rear part of the property. The rear part of the property, we're trying to get, I think, around 35 houses. So in terms of total units, I think the hotel, we were hoping to get around 40 units. The condotels were in 6 or 7 buildings and around 140 units, and the houses were around 35 or 40. So I think it comes into the range of like 210 to 220 units. It would be a property that I would manage. It would be a very supportive property, provide a lot of services to the residents. In terms of the kind of the lifestyle and the overall plan, we were planning on moving forward with an agri-hood, and I'm not so sure people are familiar with that. So I think we attached references to agri-hoods where you can kind of go online and click on it and see some presentations on agri-hoods, which gives you the a lot of really helpful information. Slide number 5. So these are all the same programs that when we met hundreds of people up on the property and toured them and went through our plan. These are all, videos that we've provided in the past. So if you want to re-access them and take a look, please do. Basically, for years and years and years, just to try to, again, provide more information and clarify what we're trying to do with the agri-hood. Communities would be built around a golf course as the amenity. And in this case, the amenity is the farm. So what we're trying to do, and this will provide it. So this is done by CBS Morning News, NBC Today Show, did presentations on this. So I don't think there's one that I'm aware of in the Northeast, but, basically, and again, these will give you the overview. We can grow flowers and vegetables and do a whole bunch of health-related stuff so that people can, live on the property and get all those types of amenities and all those types of services. And it's all part of that, healthy living, healthy lifestyle, farm to table living. So there's housing, hotel, amenities. In terms of the amenities, on the plan, there's a pool, gym, spa, recreation areas. We would provide the maintenance, the housekeeping, the laundry. To the extent people wanted it, there would be a restaurant. Can't have too many of those, So it just kind of provides an overall lifestyle. And if people need a lot of support, it's there. If people want to get a lot of services, they're there. And if people don't, that's fine too. I think the type of thing we're talking about doing, the type of housing we're talking about providing, it really doesn't exist in Stockbridge. So it's not trying to do additional housing that replicates what's already here. We're trying to do something a little bit different and trying to fill an unmet need. A lot has changed over the last couple of years, but when I pulled the plan out and I was going through it a month or two ago, and I looked at all the things we were talking about 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and then I looked at all the things that have happened recently. We really don't have any new ideas, and we really just want to kind of recommit to the plan that we presented. And I think that kind of shows the quality of the plan we presented. So really no changes. Although prior to presenting this plan, there were probably 10 or 12 different versions. We went through a lot of meetings with townspeople, meetings with the butters, and changes have been made, significant changes have been made prior to presenting this plan that kind of was our best effort to try to accommodate as many requests as we could and still try to make the project feasible. I think you get a cross-section of people that would live there. I think it may be a real benefit to older folks that may want to downsize and may want to stay in Stockbridge and may want to live in a community that can provide them the supports they need to remain in place for as long as possible. At the same time, in other areas, there are properties that provide these types of services that are some conducive to a whole bunch of different people and even young families. So one of the things that we think will happen in this property, in the hotel, we want to provide a lot of the administrative and support services that people working from home would benefit from and use. So we think it would be an easy place to either downsize to or relocate to, In terms of the units, you know, they can be purchased. At the same time, you know, one of the things I've done in the past, and just my background is more in healthcare. So I owned nursing homes, which was a very tough place to be over the last few years. Assisted livings, nursing homes, home care companies, rehab companies, hospice companies. So a lot of healthcare. When I did this type of work in the past, one of the things we did was a lot of rentals for people. So, you know, the units are gonna be fairly expensive. And one way to make it affordable to more people is to provide rentals, you know, allow people to rent them. And then as they get older, you know, some people, you know, everybody looks at things differently. So some people really wanna own where they live. And then other people may say, you know, I wanna sell my house, you know, I wanna put the money in the bank, and I just wanna rent, you know? So, I think there's a way to make a property like this, you know, despite the fact that it'll probably be expensive, and all these inflationary things that are happening now certainly aren't gonna help. But, we wanna try to make the property as, accessible to people as we possibly can. And, there's a lot of different ways to do that. So I've always done that, which is a pretty good indicator of how I would do things kind of going forward. I do have a little bit of time now. I just semi-retired this summer. I had a feeling 5 years ago when I presented this was gonna eventually happen. So I wanted to, you know, and again, thank you for inviting me and giving me the chance to speak. But I did want to come back because, you know, I've got to figure out, you know, what to do next, and I've put in so much time and so many resources and so much money into the property that, you know, I'd like to see if this can't move forward. Again, I just want to emphasize just different things about the project. You know, there's significant setbacks that were put in place. It would be a phased approach, so that hopefully it wouldn't adversely affect abutters. And you can see on some of these slides the amount of forest that exists between the abutters and the property, and the amount of kind of on the abutters side and on ours. So, you know, I think
There.
I think what we're proposing is reasonable. In addition to keeping the front lawn open, we want to keep the rear of the property as it, goes up into the mountain, open. So that's a benefit. I think the property will generate significant revenue for the town. So there's, real estate taxes. There's, I think a lot of hookup fees. There's hotel, and meals taxes. And so we did a whole spreadsheet where I think the number is, particularly today with all the values increasing, the number is far in excess of $2 million a year. So, I think that would be a good benefit to the town. And just in terms of the development, we tried to cluster the houses and preserve as much green space as we possibly could. And I just want to reassure people that, given the opportunity, we'll do the very best job, we can. And again, I just want to thank people for giving us the opportunity to talk and give it a chance, and for people to listen and ask questions. Just quickly going through the slides, and again, I know a lot of this is redundant. I just want to make sure we get all the information out. The first slide is the overview of the whole property and the surrounding abutting properties. The second slide is a blown-up version of the front. The third slide is a blown-up version of the front and the rear development with the farm, the tennis courts, the clustered housing, clubhouse, things like that. The fourth one is kind of our vision of what the rear of the property would look like with the farm. The fifth is the neighborhood references. The sixth is the main mansion that you can see as you drive by, today.
And that's the hotel.
That would be the hotel, yeah. The seventh is kind of a view of the main mansion and some of the condotel buildings as it would look from the street. The eighth is a very interesting photo that, actually, Sean, thank you for showing me the other day. The eighth is a very interesting photo that we just kind of stumbled upon. And it's the main mansion, and it has all the grounds. And by the way, Olmsted did the grounds on this property. And it has a barn that we've been told, I think, is one of the largest barns, or the largest barn in New England.
That's a massive.
And that burned down, we've got some pictures, I think, in the 1950s. What we're trying to do, and this is why it took so long to even get to the point where we were trying to present a project 5 years ago. It took a long time to really figure out the programming, and it took a long time to really research the property, and it took a long time to try to come up with the right plan. So on this particular photo, number 8, there's pictures of the barn, and we have kind of closer up, more detailed photos as well. But it's an absolutely beautiful barn. It's a stunning barn. And to some degree, we tried to replicate the condo buildings, the outbuildings around this type of architecture. Number 9 is just kind of an overview of what existed when the DeSisto School was there. That's kind of 9, 10, and 11. And I just want people to know that there were well over 100,000 square foot of buildings on the property when we bought it. It was a very difficult situation because water pipes had broken, roofs had collapsed, and it was just a disaster. And we voluntarily moved forward and spent significant amounts of money. And we removed all the dilapidated buildings on the property, with the exception of the main mansion, the gymnasium, and the building directly behind the mansion that we refer to as the cafeteria building. And in those cases, we did a lot of repair work and a lot of investigation into those buildings. And then we really landscaped the property. And we landscaped it very well for a number of years. Property looked great from the street and was very, very well maintained. But we put significant amounts of money into being a good neighbor and just voluntarily cleaning the property up with, nothing else but just doing the right thing. So, some people may have handled that differently. So we didn't. And that's the same thing we did up in Dalton years ago when we took over the Crane Mansion and developed Sugar Hill, which in its day was quite a property. And Sean was with me then too. That's where Sean started. So that's a lot of information. Any questions we can answer?
Yeah. I have just a question for you guys first. This obviously is not just a general form, that's fine, but we're talking about now this specific project, and the three of us are the deciders. I mean, to agree that it happens before the election or whatever. My question for you and Michael, really, and this is just a question, is what is the process to get, this strikes me as it's like an informal, like at the Concom or at the planning board, someone comes in for an informal and they say, this is my vision, and you give them feedback about what the next steps are. I don't understand.
We don't have a special permit before us, so there's no application. This was just a chance for Mr. Sheehan to come in, go back over what his vision is, not knowing whether it was going to be the same or it was going to be different. A number of years have gone by here, and circumstances have changed. He's a property owner, he's a taxpayer, he has every right to come in and do this. And fundamentally, he has decisions to make as to whether or not he wants to move forward and submit a special permit application, or he wants to sell the property. but this is not a forum for us to discuss
Our
or,
bylaws require a site plan and things that cost.
Oh, we're not doing it.
we're not doing that. This is
I
informal.
understand, I'm just saying, these things cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I'm wondering if there's any opportunity to give any feedback before he goes to that expense about what sorts of things make sense to us. I don't know, I'm asking.
I don't think we can go there. So we're not here to
No, you.
Opine.
The select board's
You're
here
here
to listen, not. make
listen
any-
and to listen to the
nothing
public.
else.
And
Okay.
to let the public ask some questions. So, that being said, we will now take questions from the public. Thank you very much, Mr. Sheehan. Are you all set?
Well, I have a question for you.
Might want to, Ms.
sit down?
Pat, yeah, you might want to sit at the end of the table here, and then we can hear you.
Because they're.
And they need to come, up close to the mic. So, yes, if you could come up and identify yourself, please.
Now, Josh Hayron, 62 Interlake Road. I just wanted to add, while Patrick was up here, if we could just give a quick rundown of what it was again. He had the picture of the building, but the number of houses, the number of condos.
Sure. The hotel would be around 40 units.
And that was without the large expansion you had on it before.
The main mansion would be the most prominent building on the, can we just bring up that, why don't we take a look at, let me show you. Mind if I stand up? So, okay, so this is, I think you're here.
Right.
Okay, that's the mansion right here.
Which slide would you like it on?
And then on the mansion,
It's just broken off.
I think it's number 2.
we're trying to
Yeah, just bring up.
do it so it's sensitive to the historical
Right
nature of the property. So we put an addition on here, and this is the guidance we were given by architects that do this type of work. So they wanted us to leave this intact, make the most.
You might want to refer what's on the screen so that,
I can move the mouse over what you would, so people can see what we're looking.
That's okay. If you could I just really interested in how many housing units and actual condo units.
Sure.
180.
So there's around 40 hotel units, in the condo units, which are all the outbuildings.
Yeah,
There's, how many buildings, John? 6 or 7? 6 buildings with about 140 condominiums in it.
yeah.
They vary in size and design. And then on the back part of the property, there's 280 acres. And we've got 35 houses, a farm, a barn, a clubhouse and tennis courts.
Now, a resort like this, would you have shuttle vans for the people on and off the property?
A shuttle vans within the property or?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I'm asking. Before COVID shut everything down, I was on my property and I see a shuttle van from a resort in Lenox go by my house, and in 5 minutes, it's back by my house. I see it go by my house, it's back by my house. A few days later, I drive down the road, it's parked at one of the houses further down in Interlaken. What are they doing? I don't know. It's irrelevant. There's no house in this town out of a 5, 6, 7, 8 minute shuttle van drive to that property. And I'm wondering how on earth you could put a resort in this town without gutting and stripping the town with investors, because I just don't see it. They buy the houses and they run the people through. If they can shuttle somebody up there,
Josh?
they'll pick the house up.
You're referring to a resort. I don't know that a resort has been discussed here. We're talking about housing units. We're talking about houses, condominiums, and a roughly 40 unit small boutique
I
hotel.
thought this was part of his original plan that didn't change with the agri-HUD. Well, it wasn't that.
Well, Mr. Sheehan, can you answer that? Are you building a resort?
I'm not sure how
You
you,
propose building a resort?
I'm not sure how you classify it. I'm sure people would classify it different ways. So however they look at it, it doesn't bother me. I was just trying to build structures like that in a configuration like that, in and around a full-service property that, was conducive to farming and healthy living and, things that would work in this area, in this community, and things that would draw people and make people happy and make people comfortable.
Okay,
Answer your question?
sure. Thank you.
No problem.
Would you like to come up and identify yourself, please?
Victoria Sujata, hi, we've met.
Very nice to see you again.
Thank you. Oh, can we see that same slide again, please?
Sure.
So right at that upper corner is like, how many feet from the edge?
There's a scale, and if you feel like, based on the amount of forest that exists between our property and the property line, and, areas you use on your property and your property line, we can kind of measure it and tell you.
I think it shows on that. Her
Yeah.
house may show on that map.
So can we look at the bigger one that shows the whole property and the abutters? Maybe you could tell us, I know we're neighbors, but sometimes I confuse my neighbors. Can you just tell us which one is yours?
It's the one right by the corner, and my pond is right there too. And so my question is, do you want me to point to it? 'Cause-
Where about?
Well, you see the pond? I see a
Little
pond.
black spot.
A little black
Up,
spot.
Way over.
Your middle lane, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
You want to be called Mr. Sheehan or Pat?
Pat's fine.
Pat's fine, okay, I'm Pat too.
Should hear my grandma. My grandma called me.
Yeah.
So this is my pond, and this is I know because I walk on this property all the time, this is a very short distance. And so my question is, how are you going to keep people, with you practically on top of me with those 5 or 6 or 7 houses right there that you clustered, the most busy place is right next to my property and not far from my pond. And as soon as people realize there's a pond there, it's going to become their pond too. And so my question is, how are you going to keep people off of my property? How are you going to keep the light pollution away from what we see in our beautiful woods? What are you going to do with all those animals that are displaced? These are the kinds of questions that, because nothing in this plan, as far as I can tell, has helped at all from what me and my neighbors have wanted.
Well, how many feet between your pond and that cluster of houses, and how many feet between your
Well,
house?
there's a meadow between, because I used it for the stump pile, and it rises up, and it takes about 5 minutes to walk around, and it catches the light from that corner right there. The people in your houses say, oh, beautiful meadow, let's go have a picnic on the meadow.
Oh.
And then from the meadow, they look right into the pond, which is then within, the sight of my house. I don't know how you're going to keep these people away.
Couple things. There's 280 acres back there. So
Yeah.
we could probably put some clear indicators where your property is and where their property is. And we could probably direct people, away from your property, and there's plenty of elbow room there. And then, just generally, there's a scale there, but there's got to be 100 yards between your house and that
The
development.
house, but not my pond.
Okay, well, maybe there's 80 yards, 70 yards. I'm just throwing numbers up, but there's,
It's very close. I know because I know where that corner is, and it's very close.
what would you like to see?
I'd like to see that whole group of houses that you put right on that corner moved somewhere else, because it will destroy us. And, I'm not just speaking for myself, I'm speaking for the people on Meadow Road. And I just don't feel like anything. You claimed earlier that you were accommodating suggestions. We've met several times. You've heard people speak in the town meeting. I honestly don't think that there's anything here that you have arranged to accommodate us. And it's going to displace so many animals. What are you going to do with all those animals if we're just asking questions today? What about all those animals? What are you going to
Victoria,
do with them?
we need to, in the event that we would like to get to everyone that has a
Yes.
question, I'd like to keep it
Okay,
short.
so thank you for listening.
But I can answer, so give you some, like a thumbnail sketch. There's 280 acres. It's an R4. If you take 280, divide it by 4 acres, it's about 70 houses. Typically, if you have a cluster development, you get some sort of additional credit, density credit to put up more houses than 70. The first draft we had 70 houses. We didn't ask for any density credits. We met with the neighbors. They didn't like the plan. We cut it from 70 to roughly 35. So we've cut our density in the back by 50%. You know, from my perspective, we're happy to talk, we're happy to meet. If we can tweak a few things, we're fine. But I think what we're asking for is more than fair. And if there's things we can do to help the animals and there's things we can do to give you a better buffer, we're fine. If there's things we need to do to, you know, put up certain signage and post certain areas and ensure your privacy, we're happy to do all that stuff. But I don't think the houses that we're proposing to build are on undersized lots or overly dense to the point where the people don't have enough recreation space. There's 280 acres in the back for the homeowners and there's 320 acres on the property. So, any other questions I can answer?
Anyone else in the room? Yes, would you like to come up and identify yourself, please?
My name is Michael Royceman. I have a couple of questions. Is any of the housing going to be for low income?
No.
And you said you're going to have rentals that people can afford. What range do you think you're going to be renting units for?
You know, it's tough to say just because of the problems with inflation and the cost estimates with the cost escalation with, you know, commodities and construction. But what I'd rather do instead of talk about maybe what we may do here, I'd rather tell you what I did in the past. So
I'm not interested in the past. I'm
Okay.
curious to know if you're going to have rentals, how inexpensive or expensive are they going to be?
Well, one of the things we could do is try to set a market rent. So if the price isn't competitive, the unit will never be rented. You know, one of the things that, you know, I've seen done is if people are on extremely limited budgets and it's a 2-bedroom condominium, you may be able to get 2 people in the condominium if they're on a tight income to share it. So I think there's some creative ideas and a lot of times, you know, people can find a way to access this type of lifestyle and this type of housing at prices that seem very reasonable. So in the past, and I respectfully disagree with you, I think your performance in the past is a very good indicator of what your performance is going to be like going forward. So in the past, when I owned Sugar Hill, I had an independent living and assisted living community. And Dalton's very much of a blue collar area, as is Pittsfield. And I had by far the nicest facility in the whole county. It was immaculate, it was manicured, it was phenomenal. And what I did was I would split the unit. I would put 2 people from time to time in a unit in order to meet their budgets, to get them in the door and to be able to provide the care. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to access it. So if I was selling the units, that would be a barrier for some people. If they had to take the whole unit individually, that would be a barrier. The other thing is I'm not sure about the mix of units. You know, a studio is going to be a lot less expensive than a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom.
That makes sense.
So maybe in terms of the splits, we could work on the splits in terms of the allocation to try to get the most amount of units we can and try to match up the demand with whatever the product is. That's why I need a certain amount of flexibility.
The reason I'm asking is we don't have a lot of housing stock for families that can't afford stuff. So when you're talking about rentals, some rentals are very expensive to people. $1,200 is not a little bit of money for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. And I agree, and I commit to you that I would do the very best job I possibly can to make it as affordable as I possibly can. And, you know, we always, when I was running that other property, there was always a way to say yes. There was always a special deal here or an adjustment here or a way to make it work. Unless there just wasn't, you know? Yeah.
People who can afford it, will pay, people who can't get it, right?
I'm used to working very much blue collar areas, so my job is, you know, vacant unit's gonna cost you a lot of money. So I'd rather have no vacancy. So to the extent I can tweak the distribution of units and match up the distribution of units to the demand in the kind of the economics in the community, I would. And then I'll find a way to get people in.
Last question, is there a major change between what you're proposing now and what you proposed in the past?
Really, no change.
There's no change.
No change.
Well, then I have a question for you, Chair Lady. If there's no change and the town voted against this last time, and you're on a select board, why would you invite him in again?
Number one, the town never voted on this. What they voted on was a proposed change to the bylaws. So that's what we voted on X number of years ago.
So I misspoke. I thought that.
Yeah, but there was never actually, I don't believe, a formal special permit application for this project. Unfortunately, this kind of discussion didn't happen in a formal, you know, in this kind of a setting. And so I wanted him to have the opportunity.
This isn't a discussion.
To come in. He's proposing his vision. He's just given his vision. We do not have a formal application.
My issue isn't
that would have to follow
with
if he
Pat.
decides.
My
to
issue is
go
with
forward.
us. Chuck, you were here the last time. You guys met individually with Pat to give him feedback and input. I know
I
that some of the,
didn't.
well, you had the option to.
I didn't because we never had an application brought before us. It's not our job before that to make decisions for the applicant. That's up to them to bring what they want in. Once we get an application in front of us, then we discuss it. We discuss with the public. We discuss actual, this is just a presentation of what he might do.
No, I'm not saying you did it
I'm not saying,
wrong.
but the reason we had this was we're getting a lot of questions from people, what's going on with the property. So this was a way to say, we didn't know what's going on with it until tonight.
Look, this is my first cottage error. I'm
Yeah,
not the
but
guy, I'm seriously asking though.
Until we get a plan on the table, I'm not making any comment because it's not our job to do that. It's our job, once it comes to say, then you deal, you work, you talk, you make your things.
Any cottage era property, not just Pat's, anyone has limited options because of our zoning. None of
Well,
it.
right, so
the idea of cottage era is that we incentivize the protection of the front yard and the mansion. In exchange of that, we offer something a little bit better than what you could get with our normal zoning. I just don't know how we get to with that discussion part because it's not in the normal framework.
It's
of the
not,
zoning.
but
There's no application.
to me, until it's an application,
Until it's an application,
we can't
we're not
comment,
discussing it.
legally comment. And I think, before you might, you can get in trouble for commenting on things that until we have an application that this is exactly what we want to do, and then everybody gets involved in the town, we're not going to just pass it, it would be all, through town meetings and town input and stuff. So we're not backdooring anything because there's nothing to
It's the
backdoor.
opposite. I think it's terribly unfair to the applicant here, frankly, because he has no chance to get feedback from us before he spends all this money.
But that's.
We
not
can't get into
here.
every development that comes in town and unless we change our bylaws and do something that allows us to do that. But right now, I think our hands are tied until we get, am I wrong here? Or is it?
It's exactly the same as like the building inspector doesn't design a house. We don't design a development. The developer submits it to you guys. He has to come in and just present what he's doing to the public. You guys are just listening. At some point, if he decides to move forward, then you go from there. But like I said, just like the building inspector doesn't advise somebody how to build a house, we don't advise a developer how to develop their property. He'll come with that based on our bylaws.
I think the problem is the word advised,
We
but
have,
okay.
we have questions from the public, Patrick.
Hi, Wayne Slosik. I think this may provide that opportunity. I know you can't speak of it, but I think this is an opportunity for Patrick to present that he never had before. The only way we were able to hear about the project was for them to present a bylaw change, which pretty cumbersome way to try to have a discussion about the project. So I think this will serve well to get some of the questions asked, at least from the public. And then I know you're frustrated about asking questions, but I think this is serve a good purpose, and I'm glad that you have decided to offer him the opportunity.
Thank you, Wayne. Tim?
The comment was made that, or the question was, were there any changes, substantial changes made from the time you presented it? And Mr. Sheehan responded no, but I think earlier, he very clearly stated that after talking with the abutters numerous times, he actually downgraded the number of units in the rear of the building. In fact, he reduced it by 50% from 70 to 35. So I would submit to you, that's a pretty substantial change. And secondly, what is missed so far was that he mentioned that this project will be built in stages. He's a businessman. He's not going to be building stage 2 until stage 1 is completed and successful. Stage 2 will be part of the next program. He won't build the next part until that part has been completed and it is successful. He has said that before. So I think he has answered those questions adequately. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
Hey, Tom. Tom Schuler, Interlaken Crossroad. I'd like to echo Wayne's observations. I think this has been a wonderful thing that the select board has done. That is to give Mr. Sheehan an opportunity to kind of make a presentation and let some of the townspeople actually ask questions and make comments. My suggestion would be that given the fact that I only found out about this, as did many people, in a sort of relatively short-term circumstance, I would respectfully suggest that maybe the select board set up a similar forum so that Mr. Sheehan could field questions and comments from the townspeople, so that the townspeople can really weigh in with respect to this issue. Because unfortunately, I think what happened the last time, there was an awful lot of conversation, an awful lot of commentary from people who had very strong negative feelings about it. And those sentiments were certainly articulated and expressed. But the format being the way it was set up, that you had to sort of act with respect to the whole issue of the grand house, whatever that thing is called, estate.
Cottage estate.
Yeah, forum, doesn't really give an opportunity for people who may have had positive feelings about the project to express them, because it really became an issue of what do you think about this, changing this bylaw, which is a very different issue than how you might feel about the merits or lack thereof of the project. I mean, I, for one, was someone who felt pretty strongly this seemed to be a pretty good idea. But in the forum that we had last time, there really wasn't the arena to express those opinions. You either talked about the bylaw change or you didn't, and you had people who had very strong feelings about Mr. Sheehan's project for their own reasons that sort of expressed an awful lot of sort of negative comments about it, which I don't know accurately reflect how others in the town may have felt. And again, I would encourage the select board to set up a similar forum, perhaps advertise it so that we have more than 25 people, so the people that really are interested have a chance to sort of formulate their positions, opinions, and questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to comment that this, obviously, this meeting is being recorded and it will be available on CTSB TV. And again, you can contact the selectmen obviously with any questions moving forward. Anyone else in the physical room with us who has a question? You have another question, Josh?
Well,
Can
it's
we?
not a question, it's more of a comment, and something somebody else said, it's quite.
Well, we need to also poll all the Zoom people, and I'm not, can I come back to you after we've touched on everybody else? How many people have we got here?
Shelby Marshall.
How many
has-
people are here total, do we know?
There are about 24 online,
This
and
is great.
then what's in the room.
Okay.
Come back every week.
Yeah.
Shelby Marshall has a hand up.
All right, Shelby, can you identify yourself and ask your question, please? Is he muted?
Yeah, now I'm not muted. Thank you. This is Shelby Marshall. I live on Cherry Hill Road. I appreciate the reduction in number of houses that you've done already. And I do like the idea of clustered housing and mixed use and all that. I have two concerns about this. And one is the number of houses, I should say the number of people who will be there. And the other is that it's luxury housing. So in terms of number of people, if I'm correct, you're going to have about 240 units, 250 units, which means, 500 to maybe 700 people there. That is a large increase in the population of the town. And to my mind, too large of an increase for this one property to concentrate. So can you make a profit? Can this be a worthwhile business venture for you with fewer people, with fewer units and fewer people on that property is question one. And then related, the answer you gave earlier about finding a way to make it work for people who are not rich, honestly, is not much of an answer. It's luxury housing, and finding a way to get people to buddy up on a unit is not really a solution to making it affordable. I don't mean affordable housing, I mean affordable to people who actually live here and want to stay here and work here. So can you find a way to build some of this so that it's not all luxury housing? You don't have to sell it for $750,000 a pop. So those are my two questions. They're related. Can you have fewer people and sell and build the units, at least some of them, to be really inviting to a mixture of income levels and make it work for you?
I don't think it can. The project that I need is the one I've asked for. And if you want lower cost units, it diminishes the feasibility of the project. And then if you take units out of it and make it smaller, it does the same thing. It's like I'm in the in the healthcare business, like nursing homes. You build the typical nursing home of 120 to 180 beds. If you don't have that volume, it doesn't work. You can't do it. So I don't want to make the mistake that others have made, where the property doesn't hit a certain minimum level in terms of economy and scale, and then it just doesn't work. You can't execute the plan. You can't pay the people. You can't staff it. You just can't do what you need to do. So I don't think I can solve all the problems. I can only present what I want to do here. I can only fill the need that I'm trying to fill here.
Well, then thank you for being clear about that. Then I have one follow-up question, which is, if you cannot get approval to do this project as you've laid it out, what will you do with the property?
I'll reevaluate and make whatever decision is indicated, just like I've done to this point. What I can tell you in terms of some of the things that you're hoping for, if this property is able to generate a couple $1 million a year in increased taxes and fees, the town can take on those additional responsibilities and solve some of those problems. That's just, I'm here to make the pie bigger. I'm not here to solve all the problems. So I don't want to make any representations otherwise. I want to be very clear.
Thank you. I'll pass the floor to somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura DeBester. Laura DeBester.
Laura, would you like to identify yourself?
I think am I unmuted now? Yeah, thank you.
Please
I don't know
identify, Laura, for everyone's benefit, just identify yourself, please.
I'm Laura DeBester. Actually, the speaker a few minutes ago did not identify himself, and I didn't know who it was who spoke from the podium. But I'm happy to identify myself.
I must have missed it.
Right. But anyway, no, I don't. Anyway, I'm Laura DeBester. I live on Cherry Hill Road. I had some of the same questions that Shelby does. I don't quite understand really what the need is that's being filled with this development. And there are different perspectives on that. And I guess what I'm looking at is from a citizen or a Stockbridge or a community perspective, what is it that the town needs that the developer could really kind of, where you're working hand in hand and developing that. So that's one kind of overarching thing. And then I wanted just to say, I think there is something more about the affordability. I mean, I think that Mr. Sheehan has said several times that this is going to be expensive. And I think when you're looking at the seniors in town, they're hoping that they can downsize and then be able to afford to move into something smaller or that meets their needs and maybe has a lot of the amenities that are being presented. And I think if there could be something that really demonstrates that, or a case study, or by talking to some of the seniors in town who this could really meet their need, I think that would be very positive.
Laura,
to sort of demonstrate that. What?
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, I'm confused about what the purpose of this is, but I would just say that I think I have a recommendation, which is that, and I've made these recommendations to the planning board. I attended the presentations at 37 that Mr. Sheehan did. And I think that when we're talking about the benefits to the town in terms of taxes and revenues, there should also be an equal analysis of what are the costs for infrastructure, for police, for fire, for all of those things. I think we should know more about how the houses would be built to be in line with climate change and renewables. And I think we should know more about farming. I mean, it just seems like this is a development that's sort of being presented as all things to all people. And I can't really get a handle on what it is or what the presentation is. So that's my question. What are you proposing, and what's the niche, and how does it meet our needs? That would be my question.
All right, well, my response to you, Laura, is that this is really just an initial phase. We're not at that point yet where analysis is being done. We don't have an application right now. This is just a chance for people to ask actual questions that are specific. The one thing I don't, and I do have a question now. The one thing I don't think that was mentioned was the average square footage of the houses that would be built in the back and the price range, because there's allusion to pricing, but I haven't heard that. So I just wondered if you wanted to clarify it.
I mean, I think the size of the housing is going to be, dictated by the market. It's what people want to live in. It's what people want to buy. It's what people want to be built. So I think there's significant flexibility in terms of, the size of the houses. The other thing to keep in mind is, there's a lot of amenities on the property. So you can work with a much smaller house if that's what people want, because you have so many other things that you can access on the property. So
I don't think we should ask him to put a dollar figure or anything, because working in.
I was just curious about the size.
But working in, the field.
Yeah, I'm just curious
You give a
about the
30-day
size.
estimate, and after 30 days, it changes because of the price of everything. So for him to lock in a square footage price, is, I think, unfair.
Can we get the 2015,
Until-
2015 prices?
Because every 30 days, it's changing every daily. So most contractors should give a bid, it's a 30-day bid, and if it isn't signed by then, the bid changes. And it goes higher because, as you know, inflation, everything's getting more expensive. So I don't think we should lock them into any
No. I
Any
was just
financial
under the impression that
answers.
these were not necessarily huge houses,
They don't have to be. I
square
mean,
footage wise.
they absolutely don't have to be. You know, it's what the customers want, which is why I think there's got to be a certain level of flexibility. But, you know, I could be wrong, but I would think a $300 to $400 per square foot cost is probably what houses go for.
now.
No, much higher.
A year from now, it could be double, triple that. So I don't want to lock you in saying down the road, somebody said, you said it was this much, now it's this much. Because people gotta realize that the price of material is changing daily.
And again, I may have it wrong, but I think when we looked at this 7 or 8 years ago, I think and this could be off base, but I think the average sale price per square foot of a home in this area was like $450. That was years ago. So I think it's with inflation, with all the things that are happening, you know.
Okay, just say, I don't want to get you locked into any
It's not
financial.
an easy situation. If there's a hope that this is going to be inexpensive, I don't think there's anything out there right now that's going to be inexpensive and affordable.
There's nothing in Stockbridge that I think that's
Nothing
inexpensive.
in Berkshire
this
County or
point.
anywhere, so. Okay.
Hart, that's all that's on there. Hart.
Is
John
this
Hart.
John?
Hi, John.
Wasn't sure.
All
Yeah,
right, John, identify yourself, please, and your question.
Hi. Can you hear
yeah,
me?
John.
Is this Mary Hart?
It is surprising
Hi.
to everyone. Hi, I just multiplied 3,000 times 300, and we're talking about 900 million to, or 900,000 to a million, just so we know. This is not affordable housing in any means, but the real question that I have is about all these units. I want to know about water and septic. How is that going to be taken care of when it's on the top of our town water? We are not on town water. We have our own well and our own septic. But I think that's a very important issue that this town has to think about, because our water system in town is going to have to handle all of that.
Or septic.
Our septic.
Well,
And
we-
wait, one more thing. I would like, I mean, I grow my own garden, as a lot of people do, and I love gardens. I did, Patrick, see that CBS special about the gardening, but I do feel that in the Berkshires, we have a lot of farms here, and we have a lot of farmers markets here. And not that I can tell you what to do, but I really think that we should be supporting the local farms, the local farmers, and have people go off that property if in fact we end up dealing and having this property here. But I think people need to support the local economy. But my major question really is about the septic and the
I'm
water.
answer that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
All right, well,
That's my wife.
Let me answer that, or?
you can answer it, I can answer it, yeah,
As far as I know, there's water and town sewer on the property.
right.
And that all this will go through in the planning stages, will go through the water department and the sewer department, which we know can handle all this plus a lot more. So we'll go through the proper procedures, through the proper venting when this project, when or if it comes before us.
We also just funded $100,000 from ARPA to do an evaluation of infiltration and what it's going to take to fix that. We're trying to do the planning, around this sort of infrastructure so that we actually have hard answers to these questions, not just best case scenario answers. So we're looking at, around infiltration, for example, as the storms get worse, you see more water going to the system, and Don's group are doing a good job at helping us.
And we do have the chair of the
Yeah.
Water and Sewer Commission here, so if you would like to make a comment about our capacity, you would be welcome to.
Don Schneider, Glendale Middle Road. As far as water and sewer, we have to remember that that is sewered, and when the Sisto school started, they put that water, that sewer line down 183, and they had over 100 and some odd students at that time. So talking to Tony Campetti, who's the superintendent, our capacity is, and that line capacity will certainly take whatever Patrick is suggesting. As far as water, there's we have more than enough capacity to give them water up there. There's a pump station at the end of the Train Hill Road that's going to be refurbished, and that line will be able to do whatever they need to do on that property. It's sized accordingly.
Thank you, Don.
So it's, that's not an issue.
Anita Swarmer.
Anita, can you identify yourself and ask your question, please?
Okay, Anita Schwerner, Lake Drive, Stockbridge. And I had a few questions. That one, is the mansion even restorable? Can it be restored? It was in quite deplorable condition when I went through it about 4 years ago, when you had the tours through the building. So I wondered if you have looked into that, which was the basis for the cottage era state bylaw to restore and rehabilitate these Gilded Age estates. I don't know if anyone has looked at that. Second, there was an engineer, your engineer, I believe, who spoke years ago and was concerned that you would not be able to build in the wetlands in the back part of the property because you would have to build a bridge to get the heavy equipment over the wetlands in order to build in the back. I don't know if you've looked into whether or not you can build in the wetlands. And you have quite a number of houses that you're talking about building units all together. And when the planning board was considering this NHRPZ bylaw and asked Jeff Lacy to see approximately how many houses could be built onto Sisto, the number was quite a bit lower. I don't know if Wayne's still there, but it seems to me it was more in the range of 50 to 60 houses. And part of their problem was that they felt this would be unfair to the developer, that it wasn't providing for enough houses, maybe too much open space. So, and you had also mentioned, I believe, when I was at an open house, that the build out would be over a period of, I don't know, how many years did you say? Possibly 10 years? 15 years?
It could be a long time. It's really market driven. I mean, the housing market today is completely different than the housing market 3 years ago. So there's no way to predict on a going forward basis what the housing market and the economy is going to look like.
Have you asked the Historic Preservation Committee, I think, or Commission, to take a look to see whether the property can be restored?
The first meeting I've had is this meeting.
Thank you.
Well, okay, so I thought I heard 3 questions in there, so.
I'm happy to answer those.
Can the old property, the historic property be restored, was the number 1 question.
I would say yes.
It has to be.
Has to be.
Okay.
There's no cottage era without a cottage.
And then, what was the second question?
About whether you could build in the wetlands, all those houses that you're
Something about
talking
building
about.
across the wetlands, yeah.
The plan would be to access the rear part of the property to build a bridge. That's accurate.
That your engineer had said that the bridge could not handle the heavy equipment that would be required.
I don't recall that, but a bridge has been designed to get from the front part of the property to the back part of the property.
What do you got? Wayne.
Do you have a comment about
Well, just, I was
Anita's?
going to answer if she wanted. Wayne Slossick. Anita, I think with the bylaw that we were considering, the NHRPZ, it actually mirrored quite closely what Mr. Sheehan has proposed here in that back area. And I asked Jeff Lacy about that, and he said, yes, it did. Now, his numbers, based on his proposal and ideas, were less, but the design itself was very similar to what's proposed. And to Laura's question, and now I forgot what it was that she had, what does this potentially bring to the town? The only thing I'm thinking is that the cottage era state bylaw was incorporated so that a property like this could be restored, and the developer would have a way, because it's so expensive to rehab these old mansions, the developer would have a chance to fortify his finances in doing that by having other properties on the land that would help with that restoration. And the idea of the cottage era was to preserve these old estates. So that's where that initially came from.
But yet thank you, Wayne. I appreciate your comments. But the predecessor to the cottage era estate bylaw, the great estates, whatever, they specifically omitted the DeSisto property as one that should be restored because it had been a school for so long, since the 40s, I think, that it no longer had the protections of a great estate. So I think a good start would be to see whether the mansion is salvageable, restorable, because it seems like it would be a very, very expensive option, and which is why the cottage era state bylaw allows Patrick to do things that he wouldn't be able to do were it just a regular development.
Okay, thank you, Anita.
Thanks, Roxanne.
Hart again has hand up.
Do we have anybody else with their hand up? Okay.
John's up,
Is it
please.
Mary or is this John Hart?
This is John Hart, and I'm only going to bring one thing to the table here. And that was when the original plan was put before everybody, Rob Ackroyd was involved. And I saw him at another project once upon a time, and I said, Rob, I said, you know, I'm on the Conservation Commission. There were people who came before us wanting to put an equine center, horses thing, at that particular piece of property. And we didn't object, but we went out, as Conservation Commission does, and we put shovels in the ground. And Rob, you can't put a pointed shovel in the ground, which is probably 11.5 inches long, maybe 12 inches long, and pull the dirt up and you see groundwater. So I said, how are you going to build these houses? How are you going to build these condominiums? And he said, we're going to build them on stilts. Well, Mr. Sheehan, is that still your plan?
We propose to build them the way we've identified them on the plan. I don't know if you stuck a shovel in the ground that you're gonna get groundwater. But I think, you know, there is an issue on the property where the water table is high, but it's certainly not within 12 inches of the surface. That's not true.
Okay, thank you. Any other hands up out there?
No other hands up.
All right, Josh, did you have another question?
Hugh's got his
I
hand
had
up.
a comment. for
Oh,
you.
Hugh, did you have your hand up?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, really quick, page.
typically in a project like this,
Hugh, can you identify yourself?
Hugh Page, East Street.
There you go.
Typically on a project like this, how do you maintain it? Plowing, mowing, that's all done privately?
Yeah, I mean, I worked with Sean for years. We cut all our own grass. We do all our own plowing. We do vendor out certain things like the landscaping, we would do a combination of in-house and contracted work to make the property happen. And then we would work on behalf of the residents to get any work done that they needed done.
I guess it's not more of a question, it's more of an understanding. So you're proposing multiple $1 million annual income for the town with little outreach to the highway and need for the town.
Won't be any for the highway.
That's, I guess, that was my question,
Before we sit down, what condition is Route 183 in front of the school?
It's bad, but it's also on the pavement hit list, so.
That's about a 2 mile stretch.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be paving it.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're taking care of that for you.
Thank you, Hugh. And anyone besides Josh in the room who has a question? Or, okay, Josh?
Josh?
It won't be very long. Josh Payron, 62 Interlaken Road. I just heard this gentleman in the back talk about what people voted for, what they didn't vote for. To me, it's irrelevant. I went to these meetings for 2.5 years. There is something that's very important that's for the residents here. And that is to have no doubt about it. The professional planner who did the diagnostic, which was exponential for the residents in the town, rebuked the cottage bylaw and he rebuked this type of project. A complete rebuke. He did not send any of this back to the planning board. And anybody out there should be asking the planning board exactly why this person rebuked this. The elected officials in the town need to tell the residents why this was rebuked, not only by Mr. Russell, also in Mr. Aaron's work, who was familiar with the town, the work itself, and also by the ad hoc committee who recommended that the town stop using this. Rather than just keep going with this, have your elected officials tell you exactly why this was rebuked. And if that takes Mr. Russell explaining it to the people, that's what they deserve.
Thank you. All right. Any other hands up? All right. So hearing no other requests for questions, I'd like to thank you,
Thank you.
Patrick, for coming in.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
And
Everybody. Nice
again,
to see everybody again.
this is taped, so you can go back and view this, and the slides are out on the town website, and you certainly can ask more questions of the select board.
Motion adjourned?
No. All right, so Hugh, would you mind closing the door, please?
Hang on, Hugh. Legally, we can't close it.
Oh, we can't? Why?
It's his open meeting.
Yeah,
We got
actually
trouble.
it does, but for this.
We got trouble
Can't hear.
before. Hang on, Hugh, we have to get out.
Got all that in here?
Want to make sure no one's here for that. And then
Yeah.
continue it.
So do we have anyone here from Berkshire Regional Planning Commission? The next item on our agenda was to be an update to its 5-year comprehensive economic development strategy report, but I'm not sure that anyone is here from BRPC. No hands up?
I'll make a motion to continue it.
All right, I'll second the motion to continue.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we'll be continuing that until a future meeting. And then the last item on our agenda is the remote meeting policy discussion. And Anita Schwerner had been in here as the chair of the Democratic Committee in town and had expressed the desire that the select board weigh in and mandate hybrid meetings. So I've got a statement that I'm going to make. and then we can all like chime in. So while I strongly support the use of hybrid meetings to facilitate accessibility, I do not support mandating chairpersons of elected bodies to run hybrid-only meetings.
Hybrid only or?
Basically, yeah, that was what the ask was, that we mandate hybrid only, that they all have to be hybrid. So the problem with that is there's benefits and there's drawbacks to hybrid meetings. The obvious benefit, which I strongly support, is the increased accessibility for citizens to be able to attend meetings in real time and participate. However, there's many legal requirements for hybrid meetings, just as there are for in-person meetings. And the management of hybrid meetings is really more cumbersome, as you can kind of witness tonight when you have both an in-person attendance and a Zoom attendance. It's a little harder to manage. One of the biggest concerns, however, is that when a disruption in technology occurs, which we had a couple of them tonight, the meeting must be ended if you can't solve that problem within just a few minutes. And since we're experiencing more of these severe weather events lately, I'm very concerned about that. Power could be out in sections of town for extended periods of time on occasion. And so power goes out in any part of town, even though we're on generators here in town hall. So in person, we would be fine. However, if it's a hybrid meeting and it's been posted that way, if you're running a Zoom component, you have to end the meeting. So everyone should be aware that meetings have to be legally posted 2 business days prior to a meeting. So even when power is restored, there's still an additional 2-day delay in reconvening an interrupted meeting. And where this presents a problem is for those of us on boards and committees that are under legal time constraints to make decisions. So we could potentially be creating legal ramifications such as approval by default if we can't get back together. So by leaving the option open up to, and it is Mass General law right now, it is up to the chairpersons, and particularly stressed for elected bodies, that they determine how they run their meetings. But by leaving that option open, then hopefully we don't run into problems like that, like I just described. And one thing I talked with Anita about on the phone was that it would be great if we could record all of our meetings at least. Now, I have talked to the 2 chairs of the 2 Parks and Rec and Zoning Board of Appeals who have not been running hybrid meetings. I think they're the only ones. But I talked to the chairpersons and they both had no problem with the idea that they could come in, they could utilize our technology we have here to record their meeting, even if they're just running an in-person meeting. That way we have a recording, it goes out and it gets shared on CTSV.
I'm a little confused. We legally cannot mandate to chairs what to run a hybrid meeting. Anita, I believe, let me, paraphrase what she's proposed, is that she wants to bring something to the town and have the voters decide whether they want to mandate that the chairs run a hybrid meeting. I don't think the discussion of whether or not they're a good idea or a bad idea, we don't have that ability to do it. So whichever.
I'm not saying that. I'm explaining why it's a bad idea, number one. And number 2, there's this other option that we have this equipment in place. We can easily set it up just like we do for this. You don't post it as a hybrid meeting. There's no Zoom component. So there's no remote component. But they still utilize this equipment to do the same type of recording. Therefore, that recording then can be shared with CTSB, and we then are actually recording every meeting, and it's put out there, and people can watch it.
So our meetings.
But who's going to do that? If Tom Schuler doesn't know how to set up our Zoom system, why would he possibly set up a video? Who's going to be there to kind of actually do the work for kind of that scenario? I don't understand how that would work.
How difficult is it? You turn on the TV, it's a matter of once it's written up and both rooms are identical, why can't we just have a procedure? That's how, when we started this, nobody knew how to do it, Patrick. A procedure was written up Mike wrote down, here's the steps, here's what you do. You turn this on, you turn that on,
So,
you do this.
okay, so that part's fine. So legally, for our meetings, we're advertise our meetings, but not advertise, we still do Zoom, but we're not advertising that it's a Zoom meeting.
No, you can't do it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's three ways to do it.
How do we do it so we
One
don't?
is Zoom.
We do hybrid meetings.
One is hybrid, where the public can come in through Zoom and comment.
Yeah.
And then in person. So in person, you could still run over Zoom, you could still, like you used to, have a camera here.
Right.
But you wouldn't be, people wouldn't be allowed to comment.
No, they
It's
can't
not a
even get into
hybrid
it
movie.
remotely.
Or a hybrid.
And what's the third? Third is in person.
There's in-person
Yeah,
only.
I understand. Yeah, you said three, and I want to make sure people heard it.
We're in person,
There's no.
Hybrid or Zoom only, right?
hybrid, which is Zoom and in person.
Right.
Which is what we do.
Yeah, and Zoom. So
Right.
if we keep going Zoom hybrid and we have an issue, we have to cancel meetings.
Absolutely, it's the law.
And that's okay.
Okay, no, I got no issue with it, but I just wonder if there's a way that we can Zoom.
Get us out of here early.
But not have it, no, we can't, never mind. I was just thinking, in person, if you don't have Zoom, we can continue the meeting, but that's fine.
I just want to kind of tell you, because now, just to respond to what you've said, we got, 1,600, 1,500 to 1,700, owners of properties in this town. We've got, seasonal, when you include seasonal people, 5,000. You've got the second oldest town in the state. I think it's incumbent on the folks who run the town to make these meetings accessible to the people who pay the taxes and who basically are the voters and property owners in the town and residents of their rentals. And I don't see how we do that in a world where we're increasingly second homeowners who are not here 9 or 10 months a year, increasingly seniors who are getting older and older and maybe don't want to come out in person. I think the bar's got to be pretty high if we're using administrative excuses that once in a while we could have a technology failure.
Okay,
But
so
nobody's making excuses. We have every intention of continuing hybrid meetings.
It's up to the person. This proposal would take up the decision from the chair at any given time of all these committees. It would make the decision one that's made for them, unless there's some Herculean effort that's necessary because, we have a blizzard, you got to run a hybrid. That just becomes the rule.
Well, 2 days ago, we didn't have any power. I mean, that can happen anytime.
And we don't
of day
run
or
the
night.
meeting,
Right. But the problem is when you have a board that has to make a legal determination within a certain period of time, and we don't know what the legislature is going to say about this either yet. But the bottom line is you could run into real problems. And we're having more and more of these significant severe weather events where we do lose power. Or clearly we might have technical difficulty.
at this point, the government's not doing anything to June.
Right.
That's after our annual town meeting. So technically, we can't have anything on the warrant until.
That's not true.
We shouldn't have anything on the warrant until the state says what they're going to
The
do.
state is going to give us the option to continue meetings if they do anything. They're not going to mandate, let me finish. They're not going to mandate that we continue meetings. What they're proposing, I'm just telling you what they're proposing is that they're going to propose that we as a town mandate these meetings.
Right.
That's never been on the table with the state. We're talking apples and oranges.
Right.
We have Anita and Peter.
But we don't know yet what the state is going to do. And what I'm saying is we've got this other opportunity where those two committees that only are holding in-person meetings now can be also recording, and they did record Parks and Rec last night. So that is at least a step up in that we would have every meeting would actually be recorded for posterity, for the public record, and it becomes more available because it will go out on CTSP.
No.
Yeah.
People I get a little frustrated when people say we're not transparent.
I like transparency. I think we're doing a good job.
How much more transparent can we be? But when everybody's saying Zoom, 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 you've been at these meetings. This was a great one. But all the meetings, 1, 2, 3 tops at these meetings. Yeah, you watch it later, but later you can't make a comment, you can't make a vote, a vote's taken. I mean, I love Zoom, but I would love to have more participation in Zoom. 1 or 2, 3 people on Zoom I mean, this is town stuff. I think townspeople,
Right.
I'm encouraging townspeople to be more involved.
I wish we had more townspeople.
Yeah.
You look at the earlier meeting we had today, you're talking about adding 150 new owners. That's like 10% of the town and none of them are going to live here full time. If you want these people to
You don't
participate.
know that, Patrick. You can't say that.
But
You know what I'm saying though, yeah.
what I'm saying is they got the opportunity to be at these meetings and they're not.
We have three.
In your home, sitting in your seat, you turn the thing on for 10, 15 minutes on a Thursday night, and be part of the town government.
Right.
That's what we want.
That's what we want.
I would rather
But
have
to
them in the room
mandate
with
it and
us.
not have, and still have the same thing, 1, 2, 3 people on a given night is, to me, is like, I'm sorry, I'm just
Well, the
talking
one-
about, I want people to be involved in town, our decisions. There's been times where when we used to have a room full, that the stuff that comes up, I kind of know what I'm discussing, what I'm voting. And there would be somebody come up and say something I never thought of, legit.
Right.
And it changed my vote because I didn't know that. So that's what you want from the townspeople, to help us make the decision that helps the town as a whole. And not just.
First joined the board, I would come and this whole room would be full. We never ever get that now. I don't know why. We're boring.
And we got Zoom.
Well,
that
no, we
would-
had COVID and people need to
But-
normalize and start actually getting out more and
But I'm
enjoying
very-
each other's company more.
I'm very surprised that Zoom is not more
Okay.
participants.
All right, we have a
Okay.
couple hands
Just-
up, so
First
calm
with their
down.
hand, first with their hand up is Peter Strauss.
Hi, Peter.
Hi, Peter.
There's a possible a compromise here, which is that the select board itself might commit to always being available on Zoom and leave it to the chairs of others not to. I have to say, I'm not persuaded by Roxanne's vision of interrupted meetings. If that vision were controlling, you would never have a hybrid meeting because it would always be possible that the power will go out. And so in order to accommodate that risk, well, we just can't have a hybrid meeting.
No, that's not at all what I'm
Let
saying.
me just say a couple more things. One of the advantages of hybrid meetings is that it saves gas, it saves time, and it reduces the town's carbon footprint. And I think these days, that's something that you ought to be paying attention to, in addition to permitting more of us to participate. But Roxanne, your hypothetical storm coming is
maybe you're
always going to be there.
Peter, just for 1 second, I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I am not saying that we're not going to keep running hybrid meetings. Most of us are. I am fully in support of hybrid meetings. We have, I think, only 2, and by state law right now, the chairman does have the right to determine how they run a meeting. But what I'm saying is a compromise in that for those that will not do the hybrid meeting, are not comfortable with doing the hybrid meeting, and we're only talking ZBA and Parks and Rec, as far as I know, for those, we can at least record them. And we could, as a select board, set up a policy to say that every meeting in this town really should be recorded. And I think that's a good idea.
I think that's a good idea too, but I also think that at least the select board should commit itself to always meeting hybrid.
We are.
We already have.
Peter, I'm fully in support of hybrid meetings, but in the absence of a law passed by the town, I am not in support of limiting the prerogatives of a future chair. People in real time, in the room, should make their own decisions based on the situation at hand. There's some reason why I opposed, banning a town employee from running for election 2 years ago. I think it's crazy to tell future voters and future chairmen what they can do unless the town wants to tell them.
So let's put on the town meeting warrant for this coming election, a proposition in which the select board commits itself always to meeting hybrid, as well as permitting the chairs of other committees, if they're going to record, if they don't want to meet hybrid, they will record.
We can just do that without being at the town meeting. That's something we're doing. We're gonna do that.
Right, and also the legislature, the Massachusetts legislature is coming up with their decision on how this is going to continue. Is it going to continue? How are they going to regulate it? Et cetera, et cetera. We don't know what that is right now, but certainly we're committed to doing this. We have invested in this equipment. Thankfully, we were able to use ARPA funds. So this was great. And we are going to match and make exactly the same setup that we have in the select board meeting room. We're going to make it identical in the community room. So we have 2 rooms with the identical setup to really facilitate, to allow people to easily be able to utilize this technology. It'll be consistent between the 2 rooms. So when we have conflicts where there's 2 meetings going on, 2 different boards or committees meeting at the same time, we would have 2 rooms identical. Everybody follows the same exact procedure.
That's terrific. I just was troubled by the
idea that
argument.
I don't like mandates. I don't think anybody really does. I'm 100% behind doing the hybrid for our meetings. I'm just a little concerned that the participation up in town is not what it should be.
Yeah, I still maintain a concern though for the administrative burden of dealing with archiving is very different than us turning on the thing and letting Steve Bourne basically in the entire giant infrastructure they have manage this. This is not trivial. And I think we should be careful. Yeah, these are 7 years of records, you know.
What do you, I don't know what you.
If you record it, you have to keep it for 7 years. You know, it's like.
So?
What's the big deal?
It's a huge deal. We can't even find like reports that we did 2 or 3 years ago that were on paper sometimes.
Yeah, but it used to be discs and it'll be on the computer.
Michael, what do you think?
I have to check that. We have to maintain it for 7 years.
I think it's 7 or 10, Donna told me. It's some huge amount of time.
But it's a file, it's a video file.
Once you develop the minutes from the recording, whether an audio or video recording, then the other recording isn't required to be kept. I mean,
then so we're not storing
unless they're changing.
This is something the legislature is probably going to weigh in on in terms of all these technicalities of when you're running hybrid meetings. We know, you know, the minutes of the meeting, there are laws surrounding that. There is retention period on that. We don't know what's going to happen with hybrid, but it's not that big of a deal, Patrick. You have a video file that's created, it's on the hard drive, and you archive it like you archive anything else in the town records.
Yeah, okay.
On the server.
I mean, you're the expert on that.
I know, I'm just telling you, like, just uploading a video file can take 2 or 3 hours of time. These are just, it's not technically a trivial challenge. I wouldn't minimize the amount of work that goes into making this a reality for every meeting we have. Yeah. This was an unbelievably incredible effort they did. And we're not going to easily duplicate it with, you know, the number of people we have in town hall who already have jobs. I'm just saying.
Okay, well, we'll do our best.
So 2 people with their hands up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next one was Anita.
Anita, you're laughing.
Anita, you have a comment.
I have lots of comments. Sorry. What we actually requested was that the select board support an article on the upcoming town warrant requiring that all public meetings in Stockbridge have a remote component. So that was the original request. And yes, the legislature at this point has extended the hybrid meetings to July 15th, I believe, and they are looking into the future, but we are the trendsetters. And what our suggestion has become very popular with other town committees that I have discussed it with. And they also did not like the idea of only having recordings of the meeting, which is why we had requested the continuation of a remote component, which allows town residents to participate wherever they are. Second homeowners, part-time residents who need to come in to appear before a committee for a public hearing or whatever, instead of having to drive into town, they are able to participate remotely. Yes, it's been noted by the legislature that it can happen, as you say, where we lose internet like we did on Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It just is all a blur this week. But, they've made that provision that if it can't be restarted, then you have to end the meeting and reschedule it. And yeah, it's not the best, but it doesn't happen that often. So what we are asking is whether the select board would support a warrant, an article on the town warrant that would require the continuation of a remote component for all committee meetings. I know that you've said you can't mandate it, that you can't require, but you can request that all committee have this remote component, and maybe town pressure, the citizens could pressure those who are resistant, like Tom Schuler, who refuses to even reply to my emails. So in that case, yes, a recording would provide provide a solution. Yesterday, I think the problem was because the pilot committee and the Parks and Rec were scheduled at the same time. So I thank you, Michael, for going in and recording Parks and Rec. I don't think that they objected to the idea of a Zoom component to the meeting. And, this is.
Well, Anita, I can tell you, initially, when this first came up, when this became a possibility for us, we did, as a board, recommend strongly that people run hybrid meetings. We did recommend that. Now, I've talked to Tom Schuler and I talked to Steve Knopf, and knowing that they don't want to do hybrid meetings. So I did pose the question and say, hey, you can use the Zoom technology, have your in-person meeting, but, fire up the Zoom equipment and we can actually record these, which at least is better. I think that's, this next step. Now, if you would like to try to convince, both of those, the wayward two that are not using hybrid, I'm all for it. As so far, I haven't been very successful with completely convincing them, but at least I was happy that I convinced them that it would be fine to record those meetings, because I think that's at least, and I think that's an important thing. I think it's useful in a lot of ways. And the one thing that really got their attention is it's really useful for when you're having to write minutes or verify minutes.
Right. Absolutely. And I think it's wonderful that you're also going to put the same type of technology into the smaller room, to the community room, so that if there are two meetings at the same time, it would eliminate that problem. So that's all very good. Yeah, Hank is in the background because he takes the minutes, does the minutes for the Board of Health, and he sits there and he watches the recording on CTSB to help him do the minutes. It is very helpful and much more accurate.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Shelby Marshall.
Shelby Marshall, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, just I want to point out a practical issue, which is that sometimes a committee or a commission has to hold a meeting off-site.
Yes.
Board occasionally does a site visit. Cemetery Commission can't actually bring the cemetery into the room. The Agricultural and Forestry Commission will probably have site visits every now and then. So if it's a requirement that all meetings have a remote component, that means that some meetings literally cannot happen.
No, Shelby, that would have to be cut out, carved out. Obviously, that's untenable.
Yeah, site visits would have to be,
Minutes, written minutes.
Yeah, so it just.
Yeah, we thought of that, and there's no way to record a site visit.
or it's too difficult. It's
too
pretty
difficult.
cumbersome.
So those would just be minutes that will be written and put onto the website.
So and that makes sense. And I think that it may be that there are other practical issues that just kind of get in the way of making of a requirement working, where there just have to be exceptions. And, hopefully, if this thing goes through, hopefully all of the exceptions will have been figured out in time to make it into whatever it's written up and approved. But I'm concerned, honestly, that that's something that might get missed, and then, something will get screwed up.
Well, and I have a
In
concern,
government?
I have a concern in terms of, we don't know what the legislature is going to come up with. And, I'd hate to see people put time and effort into writing a warrant and going through all this, and then it's not going to get past the Attorney General, maybe because the state has not yet weighed in. And I think they're obviously the ultimate authority on how to run meetings and what the requirements are going to be. And they're always pretty complex. So, I'm not really in favor of mandating to people. I'm more in favor of, we could have a policy where we expect you to record your meeting. But I don't really want to mandate to someone how they're going to run a meeting. And I think that we can run into situations where it's just not practicable to think you can run a hybrid meeting.
We've been doing it for 2 years, almost flawlessly.
Well, but that's the point. 99% of the time, every meeting is going to be a hybrid meeting as far as I'm concerned. And we're certainly set up with the equipment. I just think we have a few outliers that maybe we need to.
You don't write bylaws for the people, and I wish we would stop using people's names. Bylaws aren't for the current chairman.
No.
Bylaws are for all of posterity. This is a statement about whether or not going forward, based on our experience coming out of COVID, that actually, and based on the profile of Stockbridge, which is majority second homeowners, and at least for the next 20 years or so, of the full-time residents, the majority of older people, whether that profile makes sense for us to think about a bylaw that would not just simply encourage folks to do it, but would require them to do it the same way that we are required to take minutes now.
Well, what's the argument to wait until the state does their thing in June and July?
What the state's going to do has nothing to do with this decision. The state's decision is going to be to give the option of doing them. It won't mandate it. This is a different thing. This is saying, hey, you want to be on a committee in town, you want to be the chairman of a committee, you better be ready to make sure you turn the Zoom on because it's going to have to be on Zoom. That's all. And if you don't want to do that, then someone else can be the chairman.
Well, I'm a little confused, Patrick, because on the one hand, just to Zoom record a meeting, you think that's too difficult for people to do, but it's not too difficult to do a hybrid meeting. It's basically the exact same technology, it's the exact same procedure. Other than your agenda doesn't say it's a hybrid meeting. There is no link for anyone to come into you.
Well, I don't know. All I know is that I'm certainly not an expert at the difference between a recording and a hybrid meeting. What I do think is that the current procedure has both a hybrid meeting has legal definitions and requirements under state law, and it has to be, archived, it has to be accessible. People have to be able to come in real time.
I don't know that.
I'm just saying that
I'm just not in favor of having that on the town warrant for an annual town meeting because it's going to take up, I think this deserves, wait till the state does, then we can talk with the public, come up with a bylaw if we want to, then have another meeting to this.
if they write
They do it, they can do it, but
if they write something up that says, will you put this on the warrant? I, as a board member, I am not going to oppose giving voters the option to determine whether this goes forward because I've seen prior boards get unfairly accused of lacking transparency, and I'm not going to, if someone gets the 10 signatures and puts it in front of us, I'm certainly not, let the voters decide. It's fine.
But then we got to deal with it, and
I know. I'm just saying.
There's a trouble. I don't see a reason why we just can't wait, let the state say their thing, see what they say. Take it from that point. If you want to make a bylaw, make it from that point on, take our time, make a nice one, and even have a special town meeting to put it through. Without rushing something for this May and then find out that it's not going to pass through the state because we're contradicting what the state wants to do. There's a chance of it. I know you're saying a little, but why through all that hassle, all that fighting, all that, get people riled up for something that may not stick?
Right.
When we could do it afterwards and know exactly what we're talking about, exactly what we're doing, we'll pass through the Attorney General, goes through, right? Whatever.
All bylaws do.
And have a secure, solid bylaw without trying to rigmarole one together and not have it work down the road. That's what I'm saying. I'm not for it, against it right now. I just think we have to go, I think the procedure should be along that line.
Yeah.
We have three hands up again.
And I didn't have supper yet.
Anita raised
Chuck
her
wants
hand.
to go home, folks.
Anita raised her hand again.
Do I correctly understand that if Anita brings the matter to you with 10 signatures, then it's going to go on the town warrant, whether or not you want it to?
Well, you're
Because
going to have to write it.
My
They have to.
impression of this conversation is you guys are really fighting the possibility that the folks of the town have a view on this question.
No, it's not a matter of their view. I think that we're just being realistic and that we deal with the state a lot. And so we're a little concerned that you take the time, you put in the time and effort to put together some kind of a bylaw about this without knowing what the state legislature is ultimately going to come up with. And what will happen, every bylaw has to go through the Attorney General's office and be approved. And what may happen is you haven't, crossed your T's or dotted your I's because we don't know what their requirements will be. And if you don't meet it, then it will all be a waste of time. Whereas what Chuck is saying is if we wait until the state actually comes out with all the regulations, rules and regulations regarding hybrid meetings, then you're in a position where you could write something that actually would be approved by the Attorney General.
But like your thunderstorm hypothetical, this is a problem which is eternal. The legislature will always be there thinking about changing its mind. And you can do something that's provisional.
Well, obviously, the option is there for people to do a petition and write a bylaw to be placed on the warrant. You have that right. But we don't have to necessarily agree with us doing it and putting it on the warrant. If you get the petition and you write the warrant, we're not going to stop you from doing that.
If they come up with a draft, I will personally go to Don and say, what do you think of this draft? I don't want to pass a bad law in this town.
You can't do that.
Why can't I do that?
Because a petition has to be submitted as written. You can't change a petition because people have to sign the.
I'm saying that before the 10 signatures come in, before she collects her signatures, I think it's crazy to not get feedback as to whether or not it can even pass muster or whatever.
A petition is a petition. That one is. If the board takes it up, then you could solicit up one, then you could send it to council. But if the board isn't taking it up, then the petition comes in from outside.
Here's the nightmare scenario. It gets through the Attorney General and it's badly written, okay? And then we have to manage this badly written law that was passed by the Attorney General that's now a bylaw.
If it's badly.
Let me finish. If we have some citizens who want to put this forward, I really think we should partner with them and then decide we can oppose it, we can approve it. But the nightmare here is that is badly written and it passes town meeting and it passes the Attorney General, because then what do? I want to get the feedback before that ever happens.
If it's badly written, it won't pass the Attorney General.
Maybe governor by then.
It might be legal without being a good idea.
Waiting a couple of months is going to make a difference to do it.
Maybe we can persuade everybody to be doing hybrid meetings. We only have a couple of people to persuade.
Right. Great.
So, we're not saying no, we're not denying it. I think we just got to stretch the process out. It's a tight window to get this done now into the May meeting. We got a lot of work to do on the budgets and all that stuff.
A lot on our plates here.
I don't see what the issue is to push it down the road. I know we're not kicking the can down the road, just to get it into July where we can take the time, really go over it, see what the government's doing, what we want to do, and come up with a really good, working together with the townspeople, come up with a good bylaw that we know it's going to work, we know it's going to pass, and it's doable for the town. I don't see the issue of going that route.
It seems like a simple bylaw. We're only asking for one thing. This really does not apply, as Shelby was asking, to site visits. It's just for committee meetings, that all public meetings have a remote.
Site visits are public meetings. So those are the issues that we got to work out. And you're not going to have time to work all this stuff out, I don't believe. If you're going to say every meeting has to be Zoom, then you got to figure out how to do a site visit.
No, you don't.
Yeah, you do.
We haven't done it in the last 2 years.
Because it's not, we don't have a mandatory. You make it a mandatory that every meeting has to be Zoom.
Hybrid meetings during COVID were mandatory.
No.
No, they were not
never.
mandatory.
We can cut
They
this
were
off now,
allowed.
but we're not, but no.
They were allowed,
They were allowed because you were never allowed to do it
Yeah.
before.
right.
So it was allowed.
If you mandate it, then I
Site visits
believe,
are posted as a meeting if you have a quorum in person.
Right.
So, but you could carve out site visit and just say not.
I mean, the other thing is, I'm worried about the unintended consequences of something that's too broadly written. So it's like you also have to think about the fact, what if you do have no power for a week and you do have a time, frame? Is there going to be a dispensation under certain circumstances where it may be critical? You've got a very important special permit in front of you and you have to have a decision by a certain date, and it doesn't look like you can do it via a hybrid meeting because you got no power.
But why wouldn't we carve out, if the technology is not working for any reason, that this
Right.
doesn't apply?
That's what I'm saying. That has to be considered. And we just think it's kind of a time crunch right now, certainly for us to do this, but petitioners can.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got time. And we're not going for the second part, which has to do with the committee members participating remotely. And that is also part of the open meeting law. We're just concerned for the town residents, second homeowners and so on, to be able to participate remotely. I mean, that's what we would like to be able to continue. And I know all the things that you're saying are possibilities, and maybe you can carve out, in case of the loss of power for over 48 hours, if there's
No.
whatever, the internet's down. But I think you can't cover every possibility. But what the legislature has passed expires on July 15th. We don't know whether they'll extend it again. And we don't want to be dependent upon them extending it or not extending. And people are going to be changing positions. I do have a call into the Attorney General's office to try and get feedback there as to, an opinion on that. And I do hope that, I think that what I was told in the past, that it has more weight if it's supported by, if it's a warrant article supported by the select board. But we do have a lot of townspeople who really would like to see this happen. So we could go forward with a citizen's petition, if necessary.
Okay.
Shelby Marshall.
Shelby?
I'll make this real quick, because I know you got to get home and get some dinner. And actually,
He's ready to pass out over here.
and actually, this is to Anita. Anita, you just said, well, maybe you don't cover every possibility, but, well, honestly, if you don't cover every possibility, that matters, because some possibilities that you don't cover could actually be quite consequential. So that's why I think that you can't just come up with stuff off the top of your head and hope that in the course of a few conversations, you've thought of all of the things that have to be thought of that will allow this to really work for everybody and for all legal conditions and for all the committees and for every, period. It's just, there's too much at stake to require stuff.
But Shelby, to that point, Roxanne and I both have attended Zooms. This is very complex stuff. There's a whole lot of law that is going on around this issue. And I think that's the point of, look at it, aside from the question of whether in general, in a perfect world, it's a good idea, I think a well-crafted bylaw is in the town's interest because of the subtleties and details here. And I would just encourage us.
I agree with you, but
Yeah.
We're trying to push it through the May meeting. I don't think it's the right way to
I'm
go.
not saying it has to be through the main meeting. I'm just saying, before it collects signatures, I think, we have access to expertise that the layperson might not have.
So would you be more comfortable if it didn't say requiring that all public meetings have a remote component, and going with what the state has about allowing all public meetings to have a remote component? I think that's one of the problems that I feel that you feel you can't require or mandate a committee to hold.
The current law allows a hybrid. And unless the legislature allows hybrid, creates a new open meeting law with hybrid, regardless of a bylaw, we wouldn't be able to have hybrid meetings. So, but right now, every indication is that the state legislature is looking at the hybrid to include it in open meeting law going forward. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, they may do it without us even needing the bylaw, saying that all meetings.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm just saying, to rock the boat, kind of speak, I don't know if it's right, to try to pass a quick bylaw through and getting, not having to pass and waiting for, we were what, 6 months or 10 months for our bylaws to pass?
Yeah.
Because everything going on, that could hold us up even longer than waiting until the state does their thing and then we make a bylaw and pass, and have it. So that's the only thing we're talking about without doing it talking about our $1 million budgets and everything else. I don't understand why it's an issue to do it a little later and do it right and not try to push something through quickly and have it wrong. That's my only, if you get a petition, that's fine. But that's my opinion, is to let's work together on it, in June and July and get a really good bylaw that would pass and that the town agrees with. That's all I'm saying. If you want to sign a petition and write up a bylaw, you have every right to, and I'm not going to stop you and I'm not going to, that's government. Go for it. Great. But that's all I'm saying, and that's all I'm going to say anymore, because I talked to the death, and I'm hungry, and I'm tired.
I'm in the car, and it's frozen.
Okay.
And my question is, how much more transparent can we be?
We would like it to continue.
We are.
July 15th.
We're 100%
July-
behind continuing these meetings for select board, but I'm just still concerned about why we're not getting more people participating.
Yeah, we don't get that many
1, 2, 3 people
normally.
tops. That's all we're getting. And I don't understand it, because this is your town. This is your government. This is where you can speak and make your point.
You had 24 tonight on.
Yeah, for this thing, but you come to any other meeting, you're lucky we have 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Can you sign this page?
Anybody who watches on CTSB.
But that's after the point we
People don't
can't.
come when they're
can't vote.
comfortable with the government. They show up when they're concerned. Like, the folks who were tonight were concerned about a project going through or not going through.
Yeah.
That's why they show up in droves. Generally, when we're doing a good job, people don't show up.
Well, we're doing a good job there, because we're not getting
You
anybody.
deserve all the credit in the world.
Right.
No, I would just love more participation from the taxpayers.
Right.
I just love it, because it makes our job better rewarding, more satisfying, and we know that we're doing things the public is interested in and has a voice in. That's all I'm saying.
Madam Chairman, we do entertain a motion to adjourn.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I have one comment, though. I really prefer having people come in, and I think at this point, having gone through several years now of, pretty miserable conditions, I think it's time for us to try to normalize. And I like to see people here, and I like to see people interact when they are here at our meetings. So I understand, is the convenience of doing Zoom, and I think it's great and it makes for more accessibility, but I still want to encourage people to actually come and attend meetings in person when they can. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Anita. I mean,
Thank you.
it's a pleasure.
take care.
Have a good
Thanks,
dinner.
everybody. All right.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Aye, aye, aye.
Aye, aye, aye.